Police arrived at quiet Missouri home just after sunrise. Inside, an entire family was already dead. There were no signs of forced entry, and no struggled and no intruder. And the one person who should have been there, the husband, the father, had vanished. What makes a man erase his own family and calmly walk away? At 6:12 a.m., a patrol car rolled slowly down Maple Ridge Drive in Springfield, Missouri. The street looked ordinary in every way. Trimmed lawns, pickup trucks in driveways, porch flags swaying gently in the cold morning air. This was the kind of neighborhood where kids rode bikes after school, where neighbors waved, where nothing truly horrific was supposed to happen. Yet one house stood out. The porch light was still on. The front door was slightly open, and the car in the driveway hadn't moved all night. The house belonged to Daniel Harper, 42 years old, financial analyst, church volunteer, married for 16 years, father of 3. To everyone who knew him, Daniel Harper was predictable in the safest way possible, which is why the dispatcher's call didn't make sense. Daniel hadn't shown up for work, he hadn't returned calls, and he'd missed a school drop-off, something he never did. When officers stepped inside the home, the air felt heavy, not chaotic, not rushed, quiet, too quiet. In the kitchen, they found Daniel's wife, Emily. She was slumped near the counter, one hand resting beside a coffee mug that was still warm. A lunch bag sat half-packed on the table, sandwich unwrapped, untouched. Down the hallway lay their teenage son, one sneaker missing, his body angled awkwardly near the stairs, as if he'd been moving fast when everything stopped. Upstairs, in their bedrooms, were the 2 youngest children, tucked into their beds. There were no broken locks, and no shattered glass, and overturned furniture. Whoever did this didn't break in. They belonged there. And Daniel Harper, the man who lived in this house, was nowhere to be found. As crime scene tape went up, neighbors gathered in clusters, whispering the same stunned phrases over and over. He was such a good dad, always smiling. I just saw him last week. But inside the home, detectives noticed something that made the room go cold. The murders hadn't happened at the same time. Each victim had been killed hours apart. Different locations, different moments, different methods. This wasn't a crime of sudden rage. It was measured, intentional, and that raised a chilling question investigators couldn't ignore. What was happening inside Daniel Harper's mind during those hours? As police began piecing together Daniel's life, the image of the perfect family man began to fracture. At work, colleagues described him as reliable but recently distant. He'd stopped joining casual conversations, ate lunch alone, missed deadlines he used to pride himself on never missing. One co-worker recalled a conversation that now felt impossible to forget. Daniel had leaned over his desk and asked quietly, "Do you ever feel like the people closest to you aren't really who they say they are?" At the time, it sounded philosophical. Now, it sounded like a warning. Financial records revealed something else. Over the past month, Daniel had been withdrawing cash. Small amounts spread out over time, enough to add up to thousands, but never enough to trigger alarms. There were no plane tickets, and no hotel bookings, and no major purchases. Just money quietly disappearing. Then detectives checked his internet history. Late-night searches pulled from his laptop told a disturbing story. Signs someone has been replaced. How to disappear without breaking the law. Remote areas near the Canadian border. This wasn't panic. This was preparation. Family interviews added another layer of unease. Emily's sister admitted the marriage had been tense. Daniel had accused Emily of acting different, of knowing things she shouldn't. One night, she said, Emily called her shaken. Daniel had stood in the doorway of the children's room, watching them sleep for nearly an hour. When Emily asked what he was doing, Daniel replied softly, "Just making sure they're still mine." Was it paranoia? Or something darker forming beneath the surface? Mental health experts consulted by police suggested the early signs of paranoid delusion, a condition where the brain slowly constructs a false reality, one belief reinforcing the next until logic collapses. But something didn't add up. Paranoia might explain fear, It doesn't explain methodical timing. It doesn't explain planning an escape. And it certainly doesn't explain how a man could carry out something so horrific, then vanish without a trace. By nightfall, the case had gone statewide. Daniel Harper's photo flooded news broadcasts. Highway patrols monitored exits. Border alerts were issued. Then came the first real break. A gas station clerk, 3 counties north, turned in a receipt, time-stamped just hours after the estimated time of the final death. Security footage showed a man matching Daniel's description. He didn't look frantic. He didn't look lost. He looked calm, focused, as if he knew exactly where he was going, which left investigators and the public with a terrifying thought. If Daniel believed his family wasn't real, if he believed he'd done something necessary, what else did he believe still needed to be done? Before the next part of the story, ask yourself, was Daniel Harper unraveling or revealing who he'd been all along? If no one noticed the warning signs, could this happen in any quiet neighborhood? And how do you stop someone who believes their reality is the only true one? If this story has pulled you in like the video, it helps more people find it. Subscribe so you don't miss the next part, where the manhunt intensifies and Daniel's beliefs come into horrifying focus. And comment below, do you think this was madness or something far more calculated? Because soon, we follow Daniel Harper on the run, and what investigators uncover next will change how this case is understood forever. By the time the gas station receipts surfaced, the case had already crossed a line. This was no longer a domestic tragedy frozen in one house on Maple Ridge Drive. This was a manhunt. The timestamp on the receipt placed Daniel Harper alive and moving just hours after the final death. The location, a lonely station off a state highway, suggested intent, not panic. He hadn't fled blindly. He'd followed a route. And now, investigators had to answer a frightening question. Where does a man go when he believes everyone he loved was never real? The footage from the gas station was grainy but unmistakable. Daniel stepped into the frame wearing jeans, a dark jacket, and a baseball cap pulled low. He paid in cash. Didn't rush. Didn't glance at the security camera. He even held the door open for another customer on his way out. That detail haunted detectives. It wasn't the behavior of someone unraveling in real time. It was the behavior of someone who believed he'd already done what needed to be done. Authorities expanded the search radius and brought in federal behavioral analysts. The consensus was chilling. Daniel wasn't running from guilt. He was running toward resolution. Investigators began reconstructing his movements mile by mile. Traffic cameras placed his vehicle heading north, then west, not toward major cities, not toward airports, toward isolation. Along the way, Daniel stopped at 2 hardware stores, bought rope, a tarp, fuel canisters. Each purchase raised new alarms. Was he planning to disappear permanently or preparing for something else entirely? Meanwhile, detectives dug deeper into Daniel's past and found something no one had paid attention to before. 3 years earlier, Daniel had sought counseling through his employer's mental health program. The sessions were brief. He stopped going after just 4 visits. The therapist's notes, now subpoenaed, painted an unsettling picture. Daniel spoke of feeling out of sync with the world and of believing certain people were mirrors pretending to be human, of fearing that if he slept too deeply, he might wake up somewhere else, or as someone else. The therapist had recommended a psychiatric evaluation. Daniel never followed up. Instead, he withdrew, and the beliefs festered. Back in Springfield, investigators made a disturbing discovery while reviewing Daniel's personal belongings that had been overlooked during the initial search. Hidden inside a locked toolbox in the garage was a handwritten notebook, not a diary, a ledger. The pages were filled with dates, times, and cryptic phrases. Observation complete. Inconsistency confirmed. Replacement suspected. Beside each phrase were initials. His wife's, his son's, his daughter's. The final entry, written in heavy ink, read, "Psycho closed." No date, no explanation, just those 2 words. As the public learned more, fear rippled beyond Springfield. People began asking uncomfortable questions. How well do we really know the people we live with? What does untreated mental illness look like before it turns catastrophic? And how many warning signs do we dismiss because they're inconvenient? Then, on the 9th day of the manhunt, Daniel resurfaced. Not in the way anyone expected. A hiker in western Montana reported a burned-out cabin deep in the woods. Inside, he noticed signs of recent habitation. Food wrappers, a sleeping bag, fresh footprints in the snow, and written on the inside wall, scrawled in charcoal, were 3 words. They were not them. The message was unmistakable. Daniel was still thinking in absolutes, still convinced, still dangerous. FBI negotiators and state police converged on the area, sweeping the terrain inch by inch. Helicopters circled overhead. Drones scanned the forest. This wasn't just about arrest anymore. This was about preventing whatever Daniel believed came next. Behavioral analysts warned investigators to tread carefully. In Daniel's mind, he wasn't a criminal. He was a corrector. Someone who had fixed a broken reality. And people like that don't surrender easily. 2 days later, a thermal drone detected heat near the remains of the cabin. Daniel Harper was alive. When officers approached, weapons raised, they expected resistance. They got none. Daniel stepped out slowly, hands raised, face calm, almost peaceful. He asked one question before being cuffed. Did anyone else notice yet? At the station, Daniel waved his right to a lawyer. He spoke freely, too freely. He described his family not as victims, but as versions. He said the real ones had left first, that what remained were imitations placed there to test him. When detectives asked how he could be so sure, Daniel smiled. You don't question a dream when you're awake, he said. You question it when you start to wake up. The room fell silent. But the most disturbing moment came when a detective asked a question no one wanted answered. Why did you wait between each killing? Daniel's expression changed. For the first time, doubt flickered. I needed to be sure, he said. Each one reacted differently. That single sentence reframed everything. This hadn't been mercy. It had been experimentation. Before Daniel could say more, the interrogation was halted. Psychiatric evaluations were ordered immediately. Outside the station, reporters gathered. The public demanded answers. Was this psychosis? Was it evil? Or was it something that lived in the gray space between? And then one final revelation emerged. Forensic analysts reviewing the notebook found a torn-out page. The indentation showed words that had once been written there and erased. With advanced imaging, they recovered the message. It wasn't a name. It wasn't a date. It was a question. What if I'm wrong? And suddenly the entire case shifted. Because if Daniel had doubted himself, even for a moment, what stopped him from doubting again? And if that doubt returned, who else was he watching? Before the next part of the story, ask yourself, was Daniel Harper driven by delusion or by a belief system he chose not to challenge? If he questioned his reality once, why didn't it stop him? And what happens when a man who killed his family begins to question himself after it's too late? If this story has gripped you, like the video to support the channel. Subscribe now and comment below. Do you believe Daniel knew what he was doing, or was he truly lost in his own mind? Was Daniel Harper insane, or terrifyingly aware? The torn-out page changed everything. Up until that moment, Daniel Harper had been framed as a man consumed by delusion, someone whose mind had slipped so far from reality that logic no longer applied. But the recovered imprint told a different story. What if I'm wrong? That question wasn't written by someone lost. It was written by someone standing at the edge of awareness, and that made the next phase of the case far more disturbing. Within hours of the discovery, Daniel was transferred to a forensic psychiatric facility under round-the-clock observation. Doctors weren't just evaluating his mental state. They were trying to answer something far more unsettling. Had Daniel Harper known what he was doing, and done it anyway? The evaluations were exhaustive. Daniel spoke openly about his beliefs, about replacements' inconsistencies, and the feeling that the world had been misaligned. But when doctors pushed him on specifics, something remarkable happened. He didn't spiral. He reasoned. He acknowledged consequences. He understood legal punishment. He described society's moral rules and admitted he'd broken them. Then came the question that split the room. "Why didn't you stop?" one psychiatrist asked. "When you started to doubt." Daniel was quiet for a long time. "Because doubt felt like erasure," he said finally, "and belief felt like control." That answer followed him into court. The trial didn't center on what Daniel had done. That was uncontested. It centered on who Daniel was at the moment he did it. The defense argued insanity. The prosecution argued intent. Expert after expert testified. Some described Daniel as severely mentally ill. Others described a man who constructed a belief system and protected it at all costs, even when cracks began to form. One psychiatrist used a phrase that stopped the courtroom cold. Mr. Harper didn't lose reality. He negotiated with it. When Daniel took the stand, the courtroom expected chaos. Instead, they got clarity. He described the doubt, the exact moment it entered his mind. He said it happened late at night, while watching his youngest daughter sleep. For a second, he admitted, "I wonder if I was the broken one." The courtroom leaned forward. "And what did you do with that thought?" the prosecutor asked. Daniel didn't hesitate. "I dismissed it," he said, "because accepting it meant I had already failed. Failed as a protector, failed as a father, failed as the only one who could see." That was the moment everything crystallized. This wasn't confusion. It was a choice. The jury was instructed on a narrow but devastating question. Was Daniel Harper incapable of understanding right from wrong? Or did he understand and proceed anyway? After 9 hours, the verdict came back. Guilty but mentally ill. Life without the possibility of parole. As the sentence was read, Daniel finally reacted, not with anger, with relief. Because for the first time since his beliefs began to form, someone else was now in control. In the years since, Daniel has been medicated, monitored, and studied. Doctors say his delusions have weakened, but they haven't vanished. Sometimes he speaks of his family in the past tense. Sometimes he doesn't. But one detail haunts everyone who works with him. When asked whether he still wonders if he was wrong, Daniel answers the same way every time. "I don't ask that anymore," he says, "because the answer can't change anything." The Harper home no longer belongs to the Harpers. New families live on Maple Ridge Drive. New routines, new lives. But for those who followed the case, one question never settled. Daniel doubted himself, even briefly, and that doubt could have stopped everything. So why didn't it? Because the most terrifying truth isn't that madness blinds people. It's that sometimes clarity arrives and is consciously rejected. If this story left you unsettled, like the video, it helps these stories reach more people. Subscribe for more psychological true crime that goes beyond headlines. And comment below. Do you believe Daniel Harper was insane, or did he choose belief over truth? Because sometimes the line between madness and responsibility isn't crossed. It's refused.